I'm Gary Nickerson,
And I'm Quinn Taggart.
and this is Outside My Window. Now, in this segment, Quinn and I are going to learn all about wines, and we certainly are far from experts. Our guest, Nancy Ellis. Now, Nancy's journey with wine started at the Digby NSLC in 2013 with a position as casual clerk. While there, she met retail product specialist Leslie, who inspired her by introducing her to the world of wine education. When Nancy moved to Yarmouth in 2014, her thirst for wine education grew as she completed training from Constellation Academy of Wine through the NSLC. In 2017, she started a small educational wine group where wine lovers could sample wines and learn together. And then in 2019, Nancy joined a product sampling company, showcasing various brands through in-store tastings at the NSLC and continue to expand her training. Now, today, Nancy posts regularly on her Facebook page, Uncorked with Nancy, and is always looking to learn more about the wines and spirits industry. Welcome, Nancy.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
It's great to have you here, and so we're all ready to learn everything we can about wine. The only thing I know about wine, there's red wine, there's white wine, there's sparkling wine.
And that's where you start.
I want to talk a bit about your qualifications, your training, which is quite exceptional. So you're also a WSET Level 2 award recipient.
Well, that's
What
a
is
mouthful
that?
in itself,
Yeah.
isn't it, huh?
What is that, and what you'd have to do to achieve that, Nancy?
Well, actually, it's about a 5-week course that is provided through a lot of different places all over the world. It's a worldwide organization that trains, and they have different levels. They go up to a level 4, which is a diploma, which takes years to finish. So the level 2 that I completed was much shorter version, and it's a great place to start for any wine professional or anybody in the industry. But yeah, so I started there, and I did my training online with a very good friend of mine. She was my partner in wine, as I call her. She's actually now the retail product specialist at the Yarmouth store. So we studied together in 2019, and then we went to write our exam in Toronto. So we flew to Toronto and did our exam together. And yeah, so we get to share that experience together and get our certification. And here we are, still learning about wine, still loving wine. And
So before 2013, did you have any inkling, any interest in wine other than sipping a glass or two, as most folks do?
actually, before 2013, I can't even say that I liked wine. Yeah, actually, I got the job at the NSLC in Digby, and I never liked wine. It wasn't really for me. It was bitter and tannic, and it just wasn't a pleasant thing to drink. I didn't think I liked it at all. And actually working at the NSLC with the amazing teams that they have, both in Digby and Yarmouth, where I've worked, they're so supportive and engaging, and they encourage you to try things, which I don't know if you've noticed, but when you walk into the NSLC, half of the store is wine. So when somebody told me, maybe you just haven't tried the right wine yet, that's what made me realize maybe you're right. So I tried the first wine that I liked and kind of went from there.
I know when we're younger and we're foraying into our first experiences with alcohol, I'm trying to be diplomatic when I say this, we we usually go for what's on sale or the cheapest thing we can find. But you don't really have to spend a lot of money to enjoy a decent wine, do you?
No, not at all. And, when it comes to enjoying wine, it really has nothing to do with the price. It's what tastes good to you. I mean, if I was to serve, a $1,000 bottle of Bordeaux, you might not even like it. So what's the point of the cost of the wine if you don't even like it? So I always encourage people to, start with something you like and go from there.
What does Nova Scotia have to offer when it comes to wines? I mean, we hear a lot about wine within Nova Scotia. We hear about ice wine, of course, as well as other types. But again, what is it about Nova Scotia that makes it suitable and actually quite good for wine production?
Well, we're in a cooler climate where we are here in Nova Scotia. And actually, if you look at the globe, we're in a similar part on the world as what France is over in Burgundy, Bordeaux. So we have a great spot to be able to cultivate wine and grow wines. But like I said, we are in a cooler climate. So getting some really, really deep, dark, juicy red wines has been a struggle for Nova Scotia. So we're known more for crisp, bright acidity, white wines, and some sparklings. We're really starting to get known on the map for some sparkling wines here in Nova Scotia too. So actually, Nova Scotia now has its own official appellation, which means that we have a designated wine specific to Nova Scotia that has laws and regulations, and it's called Tidal Bay. And if anybody's heard of Tidal Bay, that is what Tidal Bay is. Some regulatory groups came together and created this wine as an expression of Nova Scotia for us to be able to show off the excellent white wines that we make here.
Somebody wanted to kind of just up their game a little bit. What would be some of your first recommendations? And don't be afraid to say brands. We're not like that here. We encourage you to, support local as well as everything else. But where would you send them?
Well, everybody has a different kind of preference when it comes to palates. I mean, you may like red licorice versus black licorice. Everybody has kind of their own palate. So maybe start along the lines of what you drink now. If you prefer like fruitier or tootier drinks, then you might want to try a fruitier wine. Or if you like something really bold, like you like a really heavy scotch, maybe you might want to try a red, something not so sweet and fruity. So you may want to try that, or even just going to different tasting events and different occasions where there's wines available to try. And always, if there's a tasting happening at the NSLC, try it. And I don't want to sound like I'm trying to push people to try something they might not even like, but that itself is a great reason to try something, because if you don't think you like it and it's there to try it, and then you didn't waste your money on something you didn't like. And then at least you've tried it, you don't like it. And then if you do like it, then it's something new you could maybe add to your regular rounds. And yeah, so always try something new. If you don't like it, that's okay. And even if you don't like something, test yourself to try to figure out what it is exactly that you don't like. Is it too bitter? Is it too sweet? Is it too fruity? And that'll help you kind of gauge and go from there.
What kind of varieties grow best in Nova Scotia?
Again, we're definitely known for our white wines. So we seem to be growing a lot more German wines or grapes here in Nova Scotia. So there's a lot of German grapes and influence here. I've seen recently they have Sauvignon Blanc that they're trying in Lightfoot and Wolfville and a couple of other different wineries. So, but yeah, again, it's the crisp white wines where we really excel. So you've got your Chardonnays, and I've actually helped pick some of the grapes at one of the local vineyards here, and Chardonnay was one of the grapes that they were growing. But there are a lot of different grapes grown in Nova Scotia. I mean, even just Tidal Bay, that appellation wine that we have, it can have upwards to over 20 different grapes allowed in the blend of the wine. So there's a lot more grapes out there than you think. There's thousands all over the world, but we have quite a few here in Nova Scotia.
I was surprised to learn that Canada is the world's largest producer of ice wine. I never knew that. I think, Quinn, you had researched that. And Nova Scotia has a ice wine festival in the valley.
Yes.
Yeah. So what is ice wine?
Yeah.
Let's start there.
Yes.
I'm no expert. What makes ice wine ice wine?
So ice wine is made from grapes that are very, very ripe. They actually leave them on the vines before they can harvest the grapes. And so what happens is, as the grapes are getting super ripe and drying, they get sweeter and more condensed in flavors. And once the ice freezes the grapes, it condenses it even more. So like if you've ever had, I'm sure everybody's tried
Ice cap.
An ice cap. Thank
Yeah.
you. Yeah. So if you've ever had an ice cap, and you notice how when you're drinking the ice cap, you get, when it melts a little bit, you get all of the really condensed and yummy flavors, and then once the ice kind of waters it down. So when you get all the juice out of the ice, that's the best part. So, and of course, when the grapes are drying, it condenses the juice, so you get less juice, which is also part of what makes ice wine often more expensive, is because you're getting less juice out of the same amount of grapes that you normally would if they were fully ripe, or I guess not as densely ripe as what they are when they stay on the vine that long time.
Is that a standalone drink? Do you pair it with food?
Oh, you can definitely pair ice wine with foods. Yeah, often desserts. So like something like an apple crisp or a nice vanilla cake, cupcake. There's lots of different things you can pair with. Yeah.
I mean, years ago, you know, when my parents were talking, they would have friends over. It was always red wine with meat, white with fish. But that's changed, I assume.
It has changed. There are some guidelines that you should probably stick to for different reasons. Like sometimes bolder red wines can make fish taste fishy, and sometimes clash with different flavors. So the brightness and the lightness of the white wines tend to complement the fish. And so if you're thinking of like a bright, acidic white wine that has like a lemon kind of flavors, often you'll squeeze your lemon on your fish. It just kind of brings out those flavors and it complements it well. So they're not really, and a lot of the rules in the wine industry aren't hard rules. They're guidelines. I mean, if you love a red wine with your fish burger, then that's what you love, and do it, you know?
Rules are made to be broken.
That's right. Exactly.
Now, I'm a whiskey guy, so it's a little different. I've got different criteria, obviously, that I'm going to be looking for in a decent bottle of scotch. But when it comes to wine, if you've got your flavor profile that you like, does that kind of limit you at trying to find something a little bit more extravagant? Or because a lot of people like to equate price with quality, but it's really not like that, is it? When it comes to wine,
it is to a degree. I mean, the more care and the more work that people put into the wines, are obviously they have to, recoup those costs when they invest more into the wine. But I mean, extravagance, you don't have to spend a whole lot. I mean, a lot of people think of extravagance and celebration as a sparkling wine. And I mean, champagne, you can pay, hundreds of dollars for a bottle of champagne, but you can get a really great low cost cava or prosecco, which is, $20, $30 a bottle or something like that. And you can still have your bubbles and enjoy. And so, I mean, and wine too, it comes down to the meaning that you put into it, because a lot like whiskey or any other beverage, you build memories with it when you share it with someone, or, like you might have that whiskey that you drank when you were a kid with, your best friend, and you see that bottle and it brings back those memories and it means something to you. So it's not always how much something costs, but it's, it's the memories and the feelings that you have associated with it.
don't always share your best scotch with your friends. That's not the way it works.
Or sometimes if you have really good friends with really good selections, sometimes you get lucky. But
no, I'm only kidding. When you're bringing that bottle of wine to your friend's place for the dinner party, is that a tough selection? Like, is it tough to go out and say, all right, well, I've been invited to a dinner party, so I'm going to bring a bottle of wine. Great. How do you pick that?
Oftentimes what I'll do is I'll bring something that I really like. Because, I mean, like I said, you walk into the liquor store, it's half the store.
Well, worst case is if then nobody else likes it, you take it with you when you go home, right?
Yeah, I suppose you could always do that too. But yeah, I like to bring something that I've tried and that I really like, so I can speak to it and say, I loved this. It went really great with, the turkey dinner we had at Easter. If you guys, the next time you're having turkey dinner, or, or if you're bringing it for the occasion, then. And if you're not sure what to bring, then ask the NSLC retail product specialist there. They're excellent, and the regular staff too. They all go through training, as you said in the interview or introduction. So everybody knows a little bit. They'll be able to help you out, no problem. Yeah, you can't go wrong.
And I definitely will give them credit for that. I was looking for a Nova Scotia wine for somebody that was in from down south in the U.S. and I honestly don't know anything about wine. And I said, well, this is what I'm trying to accomplish. Pick something, right? And she gave me a couple of different selections, and I grabbed a couple of bottles, and they were they told me they were really nice. I wouldn't know any different. Do you find, having gone through the training that you have, with a little bit more of a refined palate towards the wine, that if you do go to a friend's house, you're kind of like the doctor? People are going to always ask your opinion. What about this? What about this? Or do you find yourself maybe a little bit of a wine snob when you go to somebody else's place and they got the...
I do my best. I try not to be too much of a wine snob because, I mean, hey, I started out loving, the sweetest, the cheapest stuff out there, and there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, that's where I started. And I mean, even if somebody asked me what's the best wine you've ever had or the most amazing wine, I would probably have to say it was that first wine, the first wine that I liked, because it opened up this whole world of wines that I didn't even know existed. Like, it literally changed my life. So, you know what, the cheapest, sweetest stuff out there, that's absolutely nothing wrong with that. So yeah. But I mean, I go to other people's houses. It's interesting to see what they have, because sometimes they try things I hadn't tried or hadn't thought of, or yeah. But a lot of people reach out and ask sometimes, oh, I'm thinking about getting someone a gift, or can you recommend something that would be great for... I've had a couple of people that were getting married that asked, what kind of wine do you think we should put on the table? And so I get the occasional questions, so it's fun.
I've relied on Paul McLaughlin a couple of times, Scotch-wise. I don't get to travel as much now for work as I did pre-COVID, but going pre-COVID, I'm standing in the duty free at Heathrow, going, okay, I got cash left over. I always spend it. Anytime I go away, obviously you got to go to the bank, you got to have local currency, but I find you lose way too much bringing it back. So I usually just hit the duty free and try to spend it. Not always on booze, don't get me wrong, but so you're standing in the liquor store. It's really nice at Heathrow. If you haven't been, they have a tasting center set up. It's 8:00 in the morning. I mean, yeah, this one sounds really good. And they're really nice about it. But I've had to ping Paul and say, well, what about this? Is it worth this much? Because I don't know anything about like the value of it. I do know what I like and what I like to taste and what I like to drink. But sometimes you can make a boo-boo. And I did that. I taste testing at 8:00 in the morning when you haven't had breakfast. Don't recommend that. I don't recommend that. It changed the profile of it altogether. Now, what I thought was really, really nice, I got back and it was like crap. I gave it to my son. He drank it.
Oh, see, well, those are good gifts.
It does work out that way.
Someone does like it. I mean, they did make it, so there's someone out there who is a fan, right? You can't really go too wrong, but...
So in your opportunity to do some traveling, have you picked up some local stuff along the way that you like that maybe you can't get here?
Oh my gosh. Yes, we had traveled down to California.
Now there's wine country.
A few years ago. Yeah, it was California. Yeah, wine country. I wasn't able to actually get out and do anything for wine country. It was a business trip, but I did happen to spot a bottle of it was a dessert wine, like we were talking about earlier. It was a Trockenbeeren Auslese, which is an awfully fun long word.
Same here.
It's
fun to say.
It is. It's really fun. But yeah, so it was even just the words in Germany and German wine bottles are so much fun to learn from, because they have these really long words that you have to kind of break down, and each part of the word means something. So Trocken means dry. And Baron means berries, and Auslese, Trockenbeeren Auslese, is, I believe, the degree of ripeness in the wine. So basically, it was individually hand-picked berries out of each cluster of grapes so that they get the absolute best grape in each cluster. And you can't find that around here. So I had found this bottle. It wasn't too overly priced. It was a great value. So I picked it up and I mistakenly put it in my carry-on bag instead of my checked bag.
No.
So at the airport, we got to the airport, and yes,
can't
they
take
said,
that with
you can't
you."
take that with you. He did offer to let me have a drink of it or drink the whole thing if I wanted to before I got on the plane. But yeah, no, it's so super sweet and thick, and yeah, I just didn't feel like trying to drink that down. It'd be like maple syrup trying to.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I did find that. I was so excited to bring it home, and then nope. Couldn't
See,
do
and,
that.
and again, that's why I also
Whoops.
hit the duty free, because then you're right there, and they'll package it up for you, and you just take it
Yes.
with you on the plane.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's where my head was at, remembering that we could bring the bottles right on the plane and putting them in the overhead. And
Yeah.
so I just, my little brain did not remind me that it has to be checked when you're bringing it with you.
Back in the day in Toronto, when you were coming up from the U.S., you used to have to pick your luggage up off the carousel and then put it back on another carousel, which was like 3 feet away from it. Don't ask. Just foolishness. But then you used to have to go back through security. Now, you don't have to now, or at least the last time I traveled, you didn't have to. And I lost a decent bottle of rum that way. I didn't feel as bad because it was only like a $20 bottle of rum. But if it had been a decent bottle of scotch, I would have been a little bit more than upset about it. But those are the things that happen when you're traveling.
Yeah. But hey, at least it makes for a good story.
Yeah. But when you head in your travels like that, do you research ahead to see what's good local?
I do. I haven't really done a whole lot of traveling.
Well, nobody has
not
lately.
since then. Yeah, exactly. But yeah, I mean, and there's a great selection even just here. I mean, you get wines from all over the world here, but the local wines is fun, especially if you can make it out to one of the local vineyards or the wineries themselves is great, because they really, I mean, going to the locations, they can really tell you the story. And again, it's the stories, it's the memories and experiences that you associate with these wines that really make them special to you.
And they do tours too. A lot of them do.
Yeah. A lot of them do. Yeah. Even here, I mean, we're just booking a tour in the valley in the next couple of months. We're going to go up and do a little tour around. So that'll be fun.
So, should wine always be served chilled?
It depends on the wine. Of course, it always depends. It always depends on everything. But yeah, you want to chill sparkling wine, so it's cold. And white wines, you want them not as cold as the sparkling wines, so just a little bit warmer than that. And then red wines are generally like about room temperature or not chilled. And there's always exceptions to just about every rule, as always. So I mean, if you have a port wine, sometimes they like to try those chilled, and there's lighter reds that are also recommended to be chilled. So I mean, when in doubt, reach out, ask the workers at the NSLC. I mean, they'll steer you in the right direction.
Should wine always be served in a goblet? Does it make a difference? I know some people who drink wine, they drink it out of a glass.
Yeah.
Like
yeah.
a regular glass.
I mean, you can drink it straight out of the bottle. You could.
Or out of the box, depending on
out of the box.
Depending on your budget.
It's true. But yeah, it's recommended to drink it out of a standard glass with the tulip shaped kind of bowl. It just helps condense the aromas down so you can smell the wine and get the full experience out of the wine. It also, people don't always know, but the stem on the glass keeps you from holding the wine, which would change the temperature of the wine. So if you have a chilled glass, if you hold it by the stem, it'll stay cooler longer than if you were holding it and warming it with your hands. So
when you're communicating with people, either through your Facebook page or in person, is it usually the women or the men that are interested in learning more about wine?
Oh, that's a good question. I would say it is a little bit more women that talk about wine, but I've definitely talked to people. Lots of men are interested in wine, and actually, Paul McLaughlin, you were talking about him earlier. He was one of the ones that really, I say inspired, but really it was just pure jealousy when he had signed up for his level 2 WSET certification. I've never been more jealous to see a post on Facebook that he was pursuing it, and that feeling, I just couldn't get over it. I had to go. I had to get the certification. I had been thinking about it. I had researched it, and I just had to. So yeah, thank you to Paul with all of my jealousy and him. He was really the one that lit the fire under me. I knew I had to go.
Yeah, so it would be a wonderful thing for couples to learn
Absolutely.
together, wouldn't it?
Absolutely. And my husband, he's great. I mean, I do tastings at home by myself all the time, and he joins in. He always helps me. I'm like, do you smell raspberries? And he always loves to say that he smells leather book bindings. And when we're having red wine, it's so funny. He tries to humor me. So, but no, it's great. Yeah. Great couple activity.
Awesome. So, does soil composition and like geography make a difference in the flavor of wine?
Absolutely, absolutely. And that's part of the reason why you have wines all over the world. I mean, you can have Chardonnay is grown on just about every continent all over the world, and because of the soil and the composition, you get different flavors and different expressions in the wine.
So TV and movies. They smell the cork. They have to let it breathe. They have to aerate the wine. Is any of that true, or is that all bullshit?
Well, I mean, you can always just fill up your coffee cup and have a drink if it's your favorite wine, like it's really all what you want to do. But yes, there's definitely reasons behind all of it. Some of it is tradition, and some of it is adding to your experience. So you'll see when they smell the cork, they're double checking to make sure that the quality of the wine is okay, because there is a chance there's a bacteria that can get into the natural fibers, or I guess the natural parts of the cork, that can contaminate the wine and ruin it.
And that's if it's cork as opposed to the synthetic stuff that a lot of them use
Exactly.
nowadays.
Yes,
Right.
it's a big reason why a lot of them are using synthetic corks or screw caps even. But yeah, so they're smelling the cork. They're making sure that it's a good quality wine, so they're not serving you something that's been spoiled. They let it breathe, which is part of wine as well. If you have a really bold, really tannic wine, if you let it breathe and just pour it into a decanter, and it doesn't have to be anything too fancy. I mean, if you've got a pitcher, you can pour it into a pitcher. The more air that gets to the wine, the better for it. It'll soften it a little bit, so it won't be as harsh. And with those tannins, it'll soften up a little bit and bring out some different aromas that weren't there if you were just to pop it and pour it right into your glass. So
Now, when you talk about spirits in general, rum, vodka, and the like, of course you have cocktails where you're doing any mixology along with that. Is there a mixology kind of Bible that goes along with red and white wine?
I don't know about a mixology Bible, but there are some classic wine cocktails. Like, I'm sure a lot of people are familiar with sangria. Sangria's one, I guess you could kind of classify as a cocktail. There's a Cure Royale that, goes with sparkling wines. There's mimosa. Everybody's, pretty familiar with
Back
the
to
mimosa.
TV again.
Yes, back to TV again. Yeah. Aperol Spritz, sparkling wine again. So, yeah, there's definitely a few that you can. And I believe Benjamin Bridge has a Nova 7 cocktail that's available now at the NSLC as well. So, yes, perfectly timed question.
Nancy, what about the storage of wine? Some people will keep the bottle upright. Others think it should be on a slant, if that makes any sense. Is there a proper way to store your wine so you can have that premium product?
For sure. Great question. And yes, if the wine is stored in a bottle with, again, the natural cork, like we were talking about, cork is again, a natural thing, and it can become dry. So the reason why they lay down the bottles is to keep the cork slightly moist, and that keeps the cork nice and full and stuck in the bottle really well. Whereas if it was to stand up for a long, long period of time, the cork will dry out and it'll kind of crumble and fall into your wine, and your wine will get spoiled from too much air getting to the wine. So it's definitely good to always lay them down if they have a regular cork. I mean, a lot of of course, at the NSLC, you're not going to see, I don't think, many of their bottles at all lie down, but that's because it's a retail environment and they're turning those things really quickly. So, but if you're storing something at home, in your home little cellar, in your little collection, you might want to lay it down with a regular cork and keep it nice and supple and allow it to age. So,
What about letting a bottle of wine breathe, particularly when it's newly opened? Is that a thing?
it is, yes. You can open it up and pour it into a decanter of some sort to let it breathe a bit. It'll soften some of those harsh tannins.
Is there a time, like an ideal time frame that goes with that?
It depends on the wine, on the kind of the wine, and how old or how new it is. If it's a newer wine and it's got a lot of tannins in it and it hasn't quite got enough age on it that you want it to have to soften some of those harsh tannins, then yeah, you'd want to let it rest a little bit longer than some other wines. But yeah.
And what about age? Again, back to movies, TV, 52 Bardo, and all this other stuff that you hear out of them. What does that really do to the flavor profile of the wine? Again, I'm a Scotch guy. It's a little easier for me to understand how age changes the profile, but is it very similar when it comes to wines?
It is. A lot of the wines that you see on the shelves at the stores aren't usually intended to age. There's a very small percentage of wines that you're really going to age. So in general, just buying whatever you see there, you can open and enjoy right away.
It was a great week.
It was a great week. Yes, it was a great week. Oh gosh, yeah. But it's some wines you do want to age a little bit longer, and you can age them depending. Again, it depends on the wine. There are compounds in the wine that allow it to age. So you either want to have a lot of sugar, or you want to have a lot of acid, or you want to have a lot of those tannins that I keep talking about. And those things will help you age the wine. But over time, like you're talking about aging wines, the flavors do change over time. That small amount of oxygen that gets into the bottle through the natural cork will help the wine change and develop other flavors in the wine. Not all wines can be aged. There are wines that definitely cannot be aged. But those high quality, some of the wines from like France and Spain and old world wines, you'd want to age some of them for long periods of time. Good quality, the best quality wines in the world, different parts and the best parts of the world, you can age them for a long time. But again, with that kind of quality, you're talking about some expensive bottles that you'd want to age, because a lot of wines will, over time, they lose their flavors, they lose their fruit. So if you have like a Cabernet that has lots of red berry fruit, over time, it's going to lose that fruit. And so there's special types of wines that over time they'll develop other flavors like mushroom. And then you get into the really weird ones like tar and leather and things like that don't sound appealing, but are actually really coveted in wines. Petrol, even like kerosene, and yeah, there's some funky aromas and flavors out there that they're hard to get. So sometimes they're coveted, and some of those you only get with age. So
now, what about regionality? Because I seem to remember reading somewhere that you can't call it champagne unless it came from that region. Are there other labeling and product conventions that follow that same thing? Because of course, again, back to the Scotch side of things, it can't have Glen in it unless it's Scotland, right? Et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So, they have rules on that kind of stuff.
there are some rules. Another one that a lot of people already know probably is port. from Portugal. It has to actually be from Portugal to be officially called port. So there's different names in different regions that do have those hard, fast rules.
Is it a quality of production concept that makes it that way? Like, are they trying to protect
Yes.
the brand? Is that
Yes, they're trying to protect the history and all the work and the quality of those things. And champagne is a great example of that. I mean, some champagnes are aged for years and years before they're even allowed to be purchased, and then there's other types of sparkling wine that they don't put as much work into that is also sparkling wine. So to call it, I mean, you can imagine building your own anything and putting years and years and years of work into it to get it just perfect, and it's been in your family for generations and generations, and just all that work, and then for someone to just open up across the street and do the same thing and not have that level of work and not the level of quality, and then call it the same thing, you'd be heartbroken, and it kind of takes away from all of the work and the quality of the item. So
does that open up a whole new market for quote unquote counterfeits in alcohol? I mean, is that a thing?
there are definitely counterfeit alcohols. Yes. I know Bordeaux and Burgundy are certainly areas, and there's actually recently I think it was just this past year, there was a huge discovery of fraud with Bordeaux blends, and yeah, so it's definitely part of the world that we live in. And actually there's a wine at the NSLC that they have. It's kind of an interesting part of history. The bottle has like a gold kind of mesh over the bottle, and that used to be one of the ways that they would deter people from making counterfeit wines. So they would make the wine, they would have the mesh that would cover the top, the cork, and the idea was that they wouldn't have been able to get the cork out without damaging the gold mesh that they put over the bottle. So there's all those fun history, and there's lots of. And I mean, that's not just in wines, that's across the spirit world as well. There's a lot of counterfeit whiskeys and stolen whiskeys. And there's a really fun show on Netflix about stolen whiskeys. And I think it was called Greatest Heist or something like that. But it was a great show.
For that.
Yeah, it was a great show.
So with that in mind, I guess that's a bonus, if you want to call it that, of paying all those wonderful taxes on alcohol, is that if you're buying it from the NSLC, you're getting an authentic product.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
So what's on your schedule for the up and coming year? Do you have any additional training that you're involved in, or any tours or visits to attend to that are going to help with your tasting environment?
I have recently signed up for it's actually a free course. It's a great school. If anybody is interested in following or learning a little bit more, it's Napa Valley Wine Academy. They have a free course offering right now for Côte de Rhône, so a French wine. If you ever wanted to learn a little bit more of Côte de Rhône, then they have a free online course that I had signed up for. But they have really fun things. I'm not sure if they still do, but they used to do Wine Wednesdays with trivia. So they have like a little live Facebook trivia that you can have fun and test what you know. And but yeah, so that's on my radar. Probably the next thing that I'll tackle. I'm helping a friend of mine, actually Leslie, the one who got me into wine altogether. She's studying right now for her level 4 WSET diploma. So I help her out. We get together. Well, I help her. She knows way more than I ever will, but it helps to get together with other people when you're doing tastings, because somebody else might taste something or smell something that you didn't notice. And so they say, oh, yes, I do smell plums. Yes, now that you say it, I really do. I can pick up those plums in the wine. So that's kind of on my radar for this next little while.
Can anybody train themselves to have a little bit more of a refined palate? 'Cause
Absolutely.
I've always kind of felt that my palate was a little flat. You know, I mean, some of the stuff just tastes the same, even though I know by reading the label that I should be tasting caramel, I should be tasting the peat a little bit more, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And it's like, I can't get there.
Yeah.
But can you train yourself a little better?
For sure. I mean, at home, you can do a comparative tasting of your own stuff. If you have more than one bottle, you can taste them side by side, which really helps sometimes. And then you really, really notice the difference. I mean, if you can, comparative tastings are great. I mean, it doesn't even have to be the same wine, doesn't have to be the same spirit. Sometimes just comparing smells and tastes in one will open your eyes to something in another. So, but yeah, then there's lots of books. There's lots of online courses you can follow along. I have a book the whole book is just tastings, comparing different wines, like an oaked Chardonnay versus an unoaked Chardonnay, and noticing the difference in the two. And yeah, when you have them side by side, you can really notice the difference way more than if you just have them on their own.
Nancy, tell us more about your Facebook page and what folks can glean from that.
Yeah, so I kind of tried to start up a little Facebook page. Back when I started my little education kind of group, it was great to get together with other people. I absolutely loved that. And then it was also self-serving because I want to learn more, and you learn more when you have more people involved too. So it was really fun. So yeah, we've gotten together. The Facebook page is just something I wanted to start, so people had something in the local community that they could have and take part in. And I started doing a wine of the month, where I hope, to tell people a little bit more about a certain wine each month, and maybe get people to try more, because that's kind of what I did. I've joined different Facebook pages, and they have a wine of the month, and so you can try that kind of wine or that kind of grape and learn a little bit more as you go, just for something fun to do. But yeah.
Are there shipping issues when it comes to stuff like that? I mean, if you order out of province and whatever, what do you know about the rules of how that goes?
It's definitely a challenge, and it's really frustrating, especially when I was looking into taking my level 2 WSET. There are some educational institutes that offer the full wine selection with your course, and it's sometimes really difficult to find the wines that they recommend you try. Some of them we don't even carry here at all. So to look at the courses, and Napa Valley Wine Academy is one of them, they offer the full course with the wines included for an additional amount, which is a fraction of what you would pay when you have to buy each individual wine and a full bottle at that, because through the courses, they offer sample sizes. So, I mean, when you have to, buy a glass of wine or an entire bottle at a restaurant, it's a huge difference, right? So, yeah, so it's unfortunate that nobody in Canada that I could find so far offers anything like that. So, it's definitely frustrating with the shipping, because they won't ship across the border. A lot of places won't even ship province to province. So.
State to state, same deal.
Mm-hmm.
Tried to send something to my team leader in New York, and it's like, no, we can't do that. And it's, what do you mean? He can go to the store and buy it. It's like, why not?
Yes.
Yeah, it is frustrating.
So I'm sure when you go out with family and friends to a nice restaurant, and the sommelier comes over, asks for wine, everybody looks at you.
Sometimes, yeah. But I mean, everybody has their preferences too. Some people don't like wine still, and whatever they're interested in. But
What's the most expensive bottle of wine you've ever tasted?
oh my goodness, I thought you guys might ask this, and oh gosh.
She may not want to admit that because her husband might be listening, right?
Oh gosh. Well, I've tried plenty of wines with friends that were gifts, that we've gotten together to have tastings, and so I'm not entirely sure how much some of them cost. Sure, I'm certain some of them were not too cheap. Some of them were quite expensive. So there's definitely been a few of those, but I know for sure, and I know that I can say, and very appreciative of a wedding gift that we received on our wedding day. We were given a bottle of Dom Perignon champagne, which was very nice. So we opened that and celebrated I believe it was our first anniversary. And actually now it's become a tradition. Every anniversary we splurge a little bit and get a special bottle of sparkling wine.
Is champagne considered wine?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes,
See,
sparkling wine. It's made exactly the same way. The only difference is it has bubbles in it. And the way they do that actually is they add a little bit of sugar, and the yeast eats the sugar and creates carbon dioxide as a byproduct. And so they trap that in the wine and it makes it fizzy.
my first experience with wine many, many years ago. You'd be too young to remember. I don't know if you remember Blue Nun.
Oh my lord!
Oh, Blue Nun, it's still available. Still available.
$6 a bottle anyway.
Yes.
It was not. Yeah.
Screw cap.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Likely a Riesling.
Literally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
During the COVID shutdown, people were looking for hobbies and things to do. They couldn't even go to their homes there for a while. Did you find it increase in folks reaching out to you to say, yeah, I'd like to learn more about wine?
I'm stuck at home. I can only go to the liquor store because that's essential services.
That's right, too.
It was.
Yes. I definitely myself, I got into studying it a little bit more, just as being in the industry myself and not being able to take part anymore because I had done some sampling with the NSLC. But yeah, I dove in a little bit deeper and did some learning at home. I didn't have anybody outside my usual just friendship group reach out. We did get together a few times when we were able to in our limited numbers and sometimes outside, which was fun. We did a little boat tour on the boat, and we all went out on the boat. So we were outside and had a little wine tasting. But I was actually really cautious about the pandemic, and I had noticed that a lot of people had maybe started drinking a little more than usual during the pandemic, and I was really I don't know what the word is. I was concerned that I didn't want to appear to encourage people to do that. Everybody's health is important, and I'm certainly don't want to encourage anyone to do anything that they shouldn't do based on their own health needs and recommendations. So as much as I wanted to really dive into it and start something like that more active online, I felt like maybe it wasn't the best choice at that time. So this is why I'm kind of starting to dive into my group a little bit more now, and hopefully we'll be able to get out and maybe get together and do some things too. So,
Well, certainly pre-COVID, you wouldn't have heard much about an online meeting for anything, let alone, the manner in which things go on nowadays. And certainly, again, for my day job, if it's not a Teams meeting, it's not a meeting anymore, right? And even before that, they issued us little slide thingies to go over top of the cameras because they didn't want you to put the cameras on. Now it's not a meeting unless you have your camera on. Well, there goes the working from home thing. I wanted to work from home so I could skirt the dress code and I'd wear pants. Trust me, I've got pants on. But if it's pajamas as opposed to a nice dress shirt and a tie, that's a whole different ballgame. But now they want the cameras on. To them,
It's true.
they've replaced it a lot with this online meeting thing. So does that open a whole new realm of experience for you and your group?
it really, really does. I would love to do some online tastings, kind of guide along with people if they're interested. I'm toying between a couple of ideas to get people involved, and online tasting is definitely one of them. I've attended a few. They're really fun. They had one for just Nova Scotia wines. There was a great conversation about Nova Scotia red wines, because we had talked about how Nova Scotia excels with white wines and sparkling wines, but red isn't something that Nova Scotia is really known for yet. So it was a great conversation, and me and a couple of my little wine tasting group buddies, we kind of all hopped on that call, and it was really, really neat to all, like you say, be all in our own houses, but all together on this little meeting online. So, but yeah, and then a lot more people are doing this online tasting in different groups and all over the world. Really, you can tune in and you can do a guided tasting with someone who owns a vineyard, like in California or in France or Spain or Italy. It has opened up a lot of doors.
I've hopped onto a couple, I guess you want to call them fireside chat kind of affairs with, masters over in Scotland. Granted, I have to admit, sometimes the accent's a little hard to kind of roll through, but certainly, I enjoy listening to them and enjoy taking in some of the finer points of the chemistry behind how they get to that flavor profile and what aging it for 12, 15, 16 years does to it. And they've got it all in their head. It's just amazing how that all goes. How competitive are we on the world, on a scale? Are they producing and consuming, quote unquote, locally, or is it Canada-wide? Is it any of them going global?
Some of them I have seen gone global. I know Benjamin Bridge, one of their wines, was brought to, there was a competition in, I believe it was Italy. It was a world competition, and they were represented there.
They didn't pack that in their carry-on.
No, they didn't. Oh gosh. And I know I've read that Gordon Ramsay has had Benjamin Bridge wine on one of his wine lists in one of his restaurants. So we're gaining something here, but it is kind of frustrating as somebody who's learning about wines and studying it. It's very rarely you'll see a Canadian wine map or chapters or anything. Like, I have a wine atlas at home, and there's so little on Canada. And when they do mention it, they do usually mention the ice wine. That's where we're known for that. But I mean, there's some great wine regions across Canada. There's, of course, Niagara, and out west we have great wine regions coast to coast. So hopefully we're gaining some traction there, and we're getting some global recognitions.
You mentioned Gordon Ramsay, so I got to come back to that for a second and talk about the difference between a cooking wine and a drinking wine, or is it really the same?
Well, there are some differences. A lot of people will say, don't cook with it if you wouldn't drink with it. You use what you drink. If you like it, then use that to cook too. But you can buy specific cooking wines. We have cooking wine at home. You can get it at the grocery store. And I mean, we use it when we don't have, because sometimes when you open up a bottle of wine, you don't always have any left over to cook with. Leftover wine sometimes it's hard to come by.
It's funny how that works.
So it's a lot easier to buy some cooking wine, and then you kind of have it in the fridge and you use it when you need it. But
yeah, it was like the instructions that came with my beer can chicken prop. It says drink half the can, and then put the other half of the can. Use the other half of the can with the chicken. Yeah. But I mean, when you're cooking, the alcohol content supposedly burns off.
Yes.
So it's really the flavor profile of the wine itself that you're really trying to get to.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. Well, I mean, that's how. Talking about spirits, that's how stills work, right? Alcohol evaporates at a lower temperature than what water does. So when you're cooking, the alcohol evaporates, and you're just left with, like you said, the flavor profiles. And I think there's about two different things that we make that really we focus with wine when we make it. A lot of the time is artichokes. We love artichokes. And I love Sauvignon Blanc when we steam them in the oven. So I use Sauvignon Blanc for those. And when we make blackened tomatoes, we'll take tomatoes and pour a little bit of red wine in with them. It just really brings out the flavor. It's so good.
Wine tours have become increasingly popular in the last couple of years. Is that something you've ever tried, or something perhaps in the future?
I love wine tours. The wine tours through the valley are great. We've been on a couple. We've visited a lot of the different wineries in Wolfville in the valley. And just right down the street, really, from where I live in Carlton, there is a vineyard. Actually, there's two. There's one in Forest Glen and one in Carlton. And I've been lucky enough to join in on their harvest for the past couple of years when they go to harvest the grapes.
That's going to be a neat experience.
It was so much fun, and it really helps give so much more appreciation to wine and winemaking, because you get down in there, you're in the dirt, you're picking the grapes, and it's really literally back-breaking work. It's, the vines are only so tall and the grapes grow really close to the ground, so you're constantly hunched over, on a hill, half sideways, trying not to roll down the hill, trying not to lose your bucket down the hill, and you're cutting the grapes and stacking them up, and the buckets are big and they're heavy, and so it's a labor of love. You got to love what you're doing, and it was really fun, and actually this year, well, in previous years too, but I know this year, Planters Ridge, well, I say this year, it's available this year, but last year's harvest, so the 2021 vintage, from Planters Ridge unoaked Chardonnay that you can purchase at the NSLC. It's made from 100% Chardonnay picked from the Carlton vineyards. So
Wow.
I actually picked the grapes that are in that wine.
Nice.
Yeah, so that's
It's nice to have that connection.
It really is. It really makes it special, and you just enjoy it that much more, and it brings back those memories, like I said, So yeah, and I hope to help out again this year coming up. So Jean-Guy,
If you're listening,
Jean-Guy and Marlene, yeah, I'll be there. And, if the time is right and everything lines up and I'm available, I'll for sure be there again. But yeah, it's a great experience, and I hope that I would love to see vineyard tours open up there. I mean, it's not a winery, but that doesn't mean you can't go to a vineyard and learn about the vines themselves, and maybe pack a little picnic and have a little wine and
sure.
and some snacks right in the vineyard. And I mean, it's gorgeous there. The one in Carlton is right next to a lake. It's right across the street from a lake there. So you
Okay.
get up on the hill and you see the vines. It looks like you're in Italy. It's just beautiful.
Nice.
So.
Nancy, if folks want to contact you and start this fun learning process, Facebook page is the best.
Yeah, they can follow my Facebook page, Uncorked with Nancy. I'll do my best to post a little bit here and there. I don't want to post too much, and I'm just kind of finding my way through. But yeah, for sure, join in and let me know what you like, and we can learn together. And yeah, so follow me there.
I had no idea wine was so interesting and so much fun. Thank you. I've learned a lot.
Thank you so much for having me. There's tons more to learn. I think that's the one thing I love, and also am so intimidated by with wine, is the more I learn, the more I discover there is to learn. It's definitely a lifelong process, and I still feel today like I know absolutely nothing. And thinking about where I started when I first started working at the NSLC, and here I thought I knew all there was. I mean, there's red, there's white, there's sparkling. What else do you need to know, right? I thought I knew it all.
Apparently, there's a lot.
There is certainly a lot all over. Yeah, so it's something I plan to do for the rest of my life. So
I'm Gary Nickerson,
And I'm Quinn Taggart.
and this has been Outside My Window.